So welcome to our CCNA Cyberops class for 4/12/18. Today I'm going to do something a little different. First off, you'll notice the last chapter we actually were on was the chapter on Linux, which was chapter 3. And you'll notice now I'm looking at chapter 7. There's a couple of reasons for that. The biggest is chapters 4, 5, and 6 are a great deal of information that are normally covered in CCNT or CCNA 1 and 2 or in a Network Plus class, and really should be information that you as instructors already have. Now, your students, okay, when you're teaching this class to students, you can't do what I'm doing. You can't jump forward and skip, chapters 4, 5, and 6. That's just not going to work. You need to make sure you cover it. You may be able, depending on the level of your student, though, you may be able to blow through it pretty quickly because, again, if we've had CCNT, you should know about the TCP/IP protocol suite and unicast, multicast, broadcast. All of that you should know. So, and even the IP addressing and all these things. This is all chapter 4 is something covered already inside of our CCNA. Same thing with these services, DHCP, DNS. These are covered more in the CCNA 3 and 4, but there are still topics that are not really in depth that they give you here that your students should pretty much have a good understanding of. But again, this would probably be something, I think, Laura, you were talking about doing CCNA 1 and 2 and then giving your students this class.
Yes.
If you do that, you're going to need to spend some time in this 4.6 because they won't have as good a grasp of DNS, NAT, and those things, and the application layer, because they haven't been up through all 4 semesters. So you'll have to spend a little more time than maybe you would in chapter 3. In earlier parts of chapter 4. Network communications or infrastructure, they should know this. Other than VLANs, I may not know because, again, that's in CCNA 3, but it's covered here, and you don't have to know it in super deep detail. If a student's already had all the Cisco classes, then these security infrastructure items and ACLs and that type of thing is not going to be a big issue for them. But still, you need to cover this. I'm not going to because it's something you should already know. The other thing here is you look just like this. Threat, vulnerability, risk. This is all items covered in that Introduction to Cybersecurity and Cybersecurity Essentials or in a Security Plus class. You should know already what a worm is. If you don't, then it's a great way to learn. Your students may not know what a worm is, so you need to cover chapter 6. Again, I'm not. I'm going to jump into chapter 7 and kind of go through and blow off those other items because really you should know most of that stuff. And if not, as you read through it, then if you have questions, let me know. And Carl, I'm going to come back to your questions on the labs here in a minute. I did not have time to go back through the chapter 12 labs. I will do that tomorrow, but I will handle your chapter 13 lab questions if you have. So I'm actually going to do a little bit of chapter 7 and then skip around in 7 and show some other stuff. But what I want to talk about, well, first off, any questions before we get started? I know I sent out the hands-on skills assessment for you, and then I sent the password out for the PCAP for the second part. Again, if you're not at the point of needing the skills assessment, don't freak out. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying you should be doing the skills assessment right now. I just have some people who are, I picked them and said they were overachievers, but I got some overachievers who are at the point of needing the skills assessment. And so I wanted to get it out to them so they can use it. Hopefully you've been able to download the Security Onion OBA that is for the skills-based assessment. If not, that was part of the email I sent out, and that is on my Dropbox. If you have any problems with that, let me know, and I can move it over to also to a SharePoint on Office 365 if you're having issues getting it off the Dropbox. Any questions as when do I want all the assignments done by? Okay, Rodney, good question. Officially, this class ends May 9th. I am not going to freak out if we are still working on stuff at the end of May. My next round of classes starts May 30th. So, as long as you're finishing this up by the end of May, 1st of June, you're not going to have me jumping down your throat. If you want to finish earlier, then by all means, I can get you finished. And I can get, well, hopefully I can get caught up on grading. Good gosh. I will tell you something that you need to be aware of. This class is going to take a lot of time to grade. It's unlike, you don't just look at a packet tracer grade and go, woohoo, you know. You will notice on some of them I had to just put hundreds in and move on because I'd be here for the next 25 years trying to grade. But as long as you get done, I would like to have it by the end of May. I'll be happy. If I've had some situations where people said, I'm not getting free till the 1st of May. You know, if you go into June a little bit, I'm not turning the class off June 1st. That's not going to happen. Okay, see here, says James is saying the security onion file you sent was different from the first one. Is the second one updated version? It is not an updated version. It is a security onion that has been developed just for the skills-based assessment. So it has the files on it that you need to open up in SQL and see and actually be able to do the assessment. I will warn you about something. If you're doing the skills-based assessment and you're working in SQL and looking at the events, and you'll understand what I'm talking about when you start doing it. And let's say you go do something, you leave it up and running, and you go do something for 4 or 5 hours and come back, those events may go away. In other words, SQL is going to clear its monitoring pane. If that happens, you're going to have to actually re-import the OVA to be able to get back to what you need. So if you're going to walk away for a while, shut the machine down and have it save the state, and then come back, and then hopefully you'll still have it. If not, just redeploy the OVA and redeploy the appliance, and you'll be able to have access to it. So the one I gave you, or the one I sent to you, let me find it here. I was actually out in my, let's see if I can find this one I sent you. Yeah, I can throw this over here and show you, but it's this basically Security Onion SBA OVA, and you just import it into VirtualBox just like you would any of your other machines. Right now I've got like 10,000 things, but just go File, Import Appliance, and then just import in that skills-based assessment. And you don't have to, I'm gonna go ahead and actually do it small here. You don't have to have any other machine running. So if you're having problems with RAM, you can actually just turn all the other machines off, and the only thing you need for the skills-based assessment running is this particular machine, the Security Onion SBA, nothing else. All right. Questions so far? Any other questions? Hopefully, James, Rodney, that got your answered questions. Carl, you got one?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. What's up?
Oh, okay. I forgot to mute the thing, and I forgot where to type.
That's all right.
I noticed you didn't reinitialize the MAC addresses when you loaded that Security Onion. Did you just forget that, or?
Yeah, I just forgot to do it.
Okay, no problem.
It should be okay, though. I think even when I did it, it should be okay. But yeah, you're supposed to check to reinitialize the MAC addresses. My bad. Watch this. I can fix it. Well, maybe I can. What the hell? There we go. Now, sorry about that. I'll probably make VirtualBox die because I did that. Any other questions? All right, let's talk real quick about a couple things in Chapter 7. We're going to jump around and get them out because some of Chapter 7 is review. But I want to talk about network access or network taps. One of the things that's very difficult in modern networks is, where do you put your sensors? Where do you get your traffic information? You know, if you put it just on the edge, there's issues there because you're only going to see traffic coming into and out of your network, and you won't see traffic that is between your devices internally. You won't see, especially in the switch network, we'll talk about spanning, how it spans, but you may actually have to get a network tap that will tap or really acts like pretty much it's a repeater.
Marlon,
yeah, if you will, please mute yourself. But it acts like a repeater for the most part, and it sends any information in and out, and it sends it to your monitoring device. I'm going to mute everybody. If you need to say something, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you, unless you've got yourself muted. But this is a monitoring device, but this still is not perfect. Because with this, again, I'm only seeing the traffic coming into and out of the network. I'll give you a great example of something that was just really neat that one of my guys found the other day. He's running a virtual Palo Alto firewall, and he put it in his network. And he is been looking at the traffic. He's using a Fire Stick, and he loaded a new version of Kodi, a new version of one of the Kodi's things. And suddenly his firewall started blocking all this traffic that was trying to go out from it was basically a crypto mining.js. In other words, when he loaded this version of Kodi and one of the streams, it actually brought in a JavaScript, crypto mining JavaScript, that's trying to use the processor on his TV to do crypto mining and then send that out to a Chinese site, which was very interesting. Of course, the firewall is blocking it, but that was something that if he didn't have that in his network, he would have never seen that, wouldn't even know it was going on. And it was kind of neat that he saw it. Now here for switch networks, again, remember how switches work. Typically, a switch will only send information to the port that the MAC address you're sending a frame to is attached to. That is a real problem for our monitoring servers or our IDSs. So what you can do on Cisco devices, on a lot of many devices, not just Cisco, but Cisco device uses span ports. And what they do is you can do ingress and egress traffic. And so you can actually have traffic, ingress traffic sent to a span port and egress traffic sent, or you can have both. So you can look at the different types of traffic. You can have a source port, and that's ones that are being monitored. And then you can have a destination span port, and that is a port that is receiving the traffic. So you would use the source span ports and point them all to your sensors. The problem here is if you're not careful, now they've done something smart here. They've got two 100 megabit links, fast Ethernet, going to a gigabit link. But if these were all gigabit links going to a gigabit link, you could end up with too much traffic, and the traffic would actually overwhelm your destination span port. So you have to be careful with that. You know, in today's world, there is a thing called remote span where you can actually, instead of having the span traffic go to a local span port or span destination, you can actually send it over to a remote span port, but you're still creating a large amount of traffic. I think the way most vendors are getting away from this is using some type of agent on the host machines so that the host machine is constantly sending information to some type of console, you know, be it some type of thing with traps with Palo Alto or with you know, Cisco's monitoring tools and agents. So that's one way you could get away without having to do these span ports, but it's still not perfect because obviously if you can do something to the host operating system, you may be able to overwrite the ability for the system to send information to the monitoring tool. How many of you heard about the recent Iranian attack where due to the Cisco vulnerability, the Cisco or they had several networks that were hacked, and then their machines had a thing come up on them that said don't mess with our elections. That occurred, and yeah, that just occurred, and that was all mainly because they were using all Cisco gear and because they didn't patch the vulnerability. So Alicia, I'm on, yep, you muted yourself, gotcha. Somebody's not happy, by the way. But looking at our normal tools, we do have some protocol analyzers like Wireshark and TCP dump. Wireshark will run on Linux and on Windows, and TCP dump is a Linux tool. NetFlow we'll talk about, and that is a Cisco tool to show the pretty much basic information about a session or a flow going across a Cisco device. And then we've got our SIM tools, which are security information and event management, like Splunk and others that we'll talk a little bit about. Now, one of the things, this is Wireshark output. We played with Wireshark. You should be familiar with it. I think I talked a little bit last class even about this Wireshark University, where you can go get training and certification I bought this book, Wireshark 101. It's got like 40-something different little PCAPs you can download from Wireshark University, and then they walk you through those PCAPs and help you with analysis. Be aware that this Wireshark University does have an academic pricing, so I didn't have to pay 40 bucks for this book. I could have got it cheaper, or 50 bucks for this book. I'm just not a very patient man. You can go here, and they do actually have a Wireshark certification, which is something, I don't know if anybody here has it, but Laura Chappelle is like one of the best known people with Wireshark, and also with network design. She's very well known with network design, CCDA. She wrote the CCDA book. And I actually had somebody the other day tell me that CCDA was a big certification because of the fact that it was needed by Cisco channel partners, which I did not realize. So that's a little note there to throw out for yourself. And so Cisco devices have been known to purposely alter it by the government before they leave the country. Yeah, understand. That's why we won't buy Chinese routers and switches. I agree completely, Carl. It's scary when you get in a DVD player and the DVD player is running malware on the back end that scans your network and tries to figure out what's on your network. So I just wanted to throw that out there about the Wireshark certification. Is anybody here teaching a Wireshark only class or doing an actual Wireshark, trying to teach towards the certification? I'd just be interested to know if anybody's doing it. Nope. Okay. I think that's interesting. I don't know. It's something I would honestly like to put into a continuing education class. You know, we have, and something we do here, and I'm not just trying to, not just advertising, but I am advertising a little bit, is our IT Academy. I think I'd like to put in something like security and put in a Wireshark class and actually have it where they were doing the Wiresharks, using this book and doing the captures. I think that'd be kind of cool. I don't know what the uptake would be, but I think it may have some pretty neat possibilities. All right. TCP dump is a tool in Linux you can use to dump information on a particular interface. It can also be pulled right into Wireshark and viewed, and there is a WinDump that can be used in Windows, and T-Shark, which is like a command line tool, but you can also just run Wireshark inside of Linux. So didn't know, okay, so Carl, you didn't know about the Wireshark certification? That's pretty cool. No, Wireshark just used as a tool in classes. I agree. I think it's neat though to see where we could take it to kind of get it a little more in depth. Yeah, I agree with you, Carl. I'd be looking at it too, because I think that's something that would be a great thing for us to have and our students to have. I think it's really, regardless of what you do, whether you do security or you do networking, because I have a friend who works for Microsoft that says, you know, a lot of his work every day is looking at packet captures and trying to figure out is it a Windows problem or is it a network problem? And so that's kind of neat. Okay, so NetFlow is a Cisco technology that can be used to send information about the sessions flowing across a router to a NetFlow collector. A lot of times, and one of the things I want you to realize is the concept of not just flow stitching and flow deduplication, which filters duplicate flows, and even that stitching. But I want you to understand there's a concept, and they don't talk about it here, called the 5 tuples. Anybody heard of the 5 tuples? And I spell it wrong every time. But the 5 tuples of NetFlow, let me go back here and just use this one. The 5 tuples are typically source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, and the protocol in use. So the whether it's TCP or UDP, those are the 5 tuples. And that is one of the things that NetFlow always sends, is it sends information about the 5 tuples. I would know about those. And just the word of caution there. Know the 5 tuples and know that that is what NetFlow sends to the NetFlow collector. Some other tools when we look at security information and event management, SIM tools. These tools, and we'll look at it more when we move on to other chapters, these tools gather information from a large amount of other sources. In other words, Many of them are NetFlow collectors. Many of them are syslog collectors. Almost all of them are. Many of them have the ability, if they're, depending on whether or not they're a proprietary system, of pulling in logs from a proprietary vendor. They try to correlate and even bring in different logs and put the incidents together so that you can see a more overall picture of your network. They do reporting, so if you do have an event, you can look at reports. One of the biggest ones is Splunk. I've never worked with Splunk. I need to. Probably need to try to figure out and do it. He said the NetFlow collection engine end of support was 2015. And well, products that are retired, if it was in end of life 2015, then that means 2020 before it leaves or goes away. So it's 5 years before until the end. But also the collection engine may be EOL, but NetFlow could still connect with Cisco's Talos engine. What's the other engine? The local ICE, the identity configuration and event engine. So I believe just because the NetFlow collection engine's EOL doesn't, or end of support. Okay, so it's end of support. That doesn't mean NetFlow is gone though. NetFlow is still something that NetFlow collectors are out there. Let me pull up that's one of the problems that we have. I'll be honest with you, with anything computer-wise, there's going to be stuff that does go out. NetFlow collectors. There's all kind of. I mean, there's all kind of NetFlow collectors. Freeware NetFlow collectors. So even just because the engine that is out of that particular one is EOL doesn't mean that NetFlow is going anywhere. Does that help, Carl? Why do we talk about products that have been retired? I don't know why they did that. NetFlow is not retired though, and NetFlow is an item that is on the CCNA Cyberops. I think too, one of the things, Carl, that's going on right now with Cisco is just like in CCNA security, they are definitely transitioning all of their products. If you look at Cisco and you look at where they've been with the ASAs and you look at where they've been with their security systems have been, I won't say suspect, but they've been a little different. Now, as they're pivoting into more integrated systems, I think you'll see that they are retiring some things and bringing other things in. I wish they had talked about items that were relevant, but you'll notice there's not a whole lot of Talos and a whole lot of. They do talk about the WSA and ESA web security appliances and email security appliances, but not the not Talos a lot and those types of things or those engines. Now, folks, the rest of 7 is looking at IPv6 and different types of attacks such as amplification attack, reflection, DOS, DDoS, spoofing. And so I'm not going to go over these. These are things that are pretty much things you should know about. I am going to go over this because this is an interesting thing that, quite honestly, I wasn't very aware of before I took this class. And, shoot me if this is something everybody else knew, but I just didn't know about it. DNS, I did know this. DNS is a massive security hole, by far. It's been one of the biggest for a while. What I cannot believe is that we still allow host files, because if I want to make a very simple hack, I just put something in the local machine's host file and send them to a google.com that is not google.com, it's my own site, and then I grab everything there, or I put Chaser, or I put Visa, or whatever. But cache poisoning attacks is when you try to put in the wrong information to make people go to different places instead of where you think they're going. Reflection attacks, utilization attacks, basically you got to understand, all I need to do is shut down DNS and the World Wide Web stops pretty much. Actually, everything stops because nobody remembers IP addresses for the most part. You might be able to get the 8888 or 1111 or something crazy, but you're not going to be able to get anything useful. The other thing that I was not aware of, and that is the following. I was honestly not aware of DNS tunneling, where you can take inside of requests and put information as the leading part of a request, and that would go, and the compromising computer can use that DNS information to send information to a command and control, to send to really pretty much anything that can take DNS traffic. The really hard part of this is it's hard. It's not hard to see once you start looking for it, because there'll be some malformed DNS records. But there for a while, yeah, that lab was very interesting where they're doing the DNS. But seeing DNS, it's just anytime you can take, it's just like SYN floods. Anytime you can take a protocol that is absolutely necessary and you can twist it so that it is used for hacking purposes, it becomes very difficult for security people to stop that, because I can't just shut down TCP. I can't turn off DNS. Now I've got to be very careful about what DNS queries are going through. You know, now I've got to inspect all the DNS traffic being sent. Well, you know, how much DNS traffic goes through your network daily? Now, how much is that? What kind of firewall am I going to need to be able to do that? I need a next generation firewall, definitely. So to me, that was a very interesting thing. And there's more information, yeah, looking at this DNS traffic, which is very neat. Here's something we'll talk more about in a minute, but command injection. I'm gonna kind of come back to that in a second. But that's pretty much chapter 7. Obviously, one thing, know what an asset is, know what a vulnerability is, that weakness, know what a threat is, know what a threat actor is. One of the things I talk about identifying assets, many people forget to identify, and this is for readability or for ADA compliance. But if you don't consider your employees assets, you're making a big mistake. So, you know, be aware of that. Looking at vulnerabilities, looking at looking at your individual area. So what I like to do in my class is I sit them down in the classroom and I say, okay, let's look in this class. Identify for me all of the assets in this class. Type in the chat some things you would think that would be assets in a classroom. Computers, definitely. That's a big one, Keisha. What else? Switches and network equipment, especially in our Cisco labs. Lights. Anybody else? Printers. Yep. Students. Yeah, students. Students logging in from network drops. You'd be amazed the number of times the students don't put themselves as an asset, which is kind of wild. Okay. Now, once we identify the assets, then we can start looking at the threats to those assets. Is somebody going to walk off with a computer? We had this actually happen in one of our labs years ago. We had somebody come in, open the computers up, and steal all the RAM out of them. They didn't take the computers; they just took the RAM. So that's one of the things that could happen. So we have to look at those assets. Make them think about their house. The other thing I like to tell my students is, how many of you right now could tell me everything in your house? And then I remind them, it is vitally important that you take your phone, walk through your house, and take a picture of everything in your house. Take a picture of all the serial numbers on your devices, on your electronic devices. And that way, heaven forbid, if your house burns to the ground, you will have proof to the insurance company of all the things that were in your house. Plus, how many of us would even remember all the things in our house? My wife would be able to, because if I moved something on one counter 2 inches, she knows. She's like, who moved this? But me, our house got broken into about 10, 15 years ago, and stole a couple shotguns. And it was like 4 months later, I realized they'd also stolen my bow because I had it in the closet and didn't realize it. And I went to get my bow, and I'm like, where's my bow? And then I'm suddenly, you know, spitting cuss words left and right, and my wife's trying to figure out what's wrong. And I said, they stole my bow too. So that's something I teach my students is to go around. Oh, that's a good idea too. Next door neighbor took as many drones throughout the house, took pictures. That's a good idea too. Just one thing I will tell you is make sure you then take those pictures and save them on a drive that's in the cloud, so that, you know, if you save those pictures on the machine, on the PC in your house, and your house burns down, you're pretty much out of luck. So the defense in depth, we're looking at trying to do a screening router, then you have a firewall, then you have your actual router, and then many people even say you would put an internal firewall here. And this is not even touching the idea of virtualization and the idea of east to west traffic versus north to south traffic. And that is something to consider. We're looking at the security onion and not the operating system we're using, but the idea of onion, and some people say artichoke. You know, you have passwords, client-side attacks, databases, but I like the onion because, you know, the more you cut into an onion, the more you cry. So you're trying to put your assets in the middle of this onion and then create all the layers that you can. This is also where many people decide that they don't want their firewall and their internal hardened devices to be from the same vendor because of the fact that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Okay. And then some people call it the artichoke, where you put your most important data in the center and then move from there. So policies, one of the things we talk about here is company policies, the rules of conduct, the employee policies maintained by human resources to identify things like salary, pay, benefits, vacation days, and then security policies. What defines what you can and cannot do on the network and what is considered to be a secure use of the network. Hopefully all of you have policies in place, and they really do set down, number one, a commitment to security, the rules for behavior, consistency, so that every time you roll out a machine, you've got a security policy that states the following things will be on it and the following security items will be implemented, so that every machine in the network has a baseline security level. You got to have some consequences. You know, if you say that you don't have in your security policy or your HR policy that a violation of the security policy can result in you being fired, and somebody downloads a movie and you fire them, well, they can legally come back to you and you know, depends on where you're at too. But in many places, they can actually legally come back and say they were fired without justification or without notice. So you have to be careful of that. And I think a big thing about security policy is, one, most places are required to have one. The negative, and I think the big problem people do with security policies is they create them and stick them in a folder and leave them and never come back to them. This is a document that should be reviewed periodically, pretty often, you know, once, twice a year, to make sure the security policy is still meeting the needs of your company. Now, again, you look at some of the things that are being there is identification, authentication policy, when you have to be authenticated, use the resources, password policies, how often the passwords be changed, how long they have to be, acceptable use, remote access, do they allow remote access, network maintenance policy, that's update procedures. Some people may also roll into this their change management policy, so that you have to have a change management form filled out before you make any changes to the network. I've got to actually turn, well, I'm not doing it, but for our data center project, we've got to turn the power completely off to this building next Tuesday. And so I had to find a 2-hour window where we could do it, and it would have the least impact on classes. So, you know, that's something that, looking at network maintenance policy, I had to kind of look at that and see what we could do. And incident handling, you know, how incidents will be handled. And hopefully this will define very clearly who's going to be contacted, what's the first thing that's going to be happening, who can talk to the press, who cannot. And that's where we're going to look at this NIST document here, which is a Computer Security Incident Handling Guide, all right, which is NIST 861. Be aware, one of the problems I have a little bit with this class using NIST standards is this is a U.S. only standard, okay? This may not be the same standard used worldwide. They will pull some of the information. It will be very similar because it is just a good incident handling overall guideline. But NIST is a U.S. Entity, so there may be other countries with their own setups. Quick question: have any of you been approached about the new European security or European privacy requirements going into effect at the end of this month? Keep saying not yet. Yeah. We teach some students who are actually from Europe, and so we're having to look and make sure we're going to be compliant. And that's, you know, I don't think they would come after Podunk, Stanley Community College, but you know, it's one of those things you have to keep in mind. BYOD, you know, everybody's phone's brought, everybody's tablet. What is it going to connect to? What is it going to be able to do? For a very long time, I would not put my work email on my own personal phone, because when you installed it and you connected, you had to give the IT department permission to wipe your phone remotely if they wanted to, if they needed to. And I was like, that's not happening, because guess what? If I'm a hacker and that's going on, I'm going to break into your system and wipe everybody's phones just to be a patoot. So that's a technical term for being someone who's mean. I didn't do it. Now we actually don't have that anymore, so thankfully I can put my phone on there or put my email on it. This is very important, the CIA, confidentiality, okay, ensuring that information is only seen by those who should see it. Integrity, ensuring the information is not changed in transit or storage. And then availability is making sure it's actually there for people to use. That's one of the big problems I've had with my NetLab system. I don't have a backup generator, so when the power goes out, I've got 5 minutes. They poured the pad today from my 125 kilowatt, well, it's not my 125 kilowatt, but for the 125 kilowatt generator, that will be used for our new data center. So hopefully my availability will go up. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. Now, folks, this is something you've got to know. This is a main component that you see on the Security Fundamentals exam blueprint. You need to know that mandatory access control is considered to be the strictest access control, and it's where you put a label onto information such as secret, top secret. I'll tell you, I had somebody this week actually come in. It was Tuesday morning. I had a special investigator from the FBI here doing a top secret clearance interview for one of my former students. So that's one of the things the military uses, mandatory access control. Basically, it gets assigned a level, and if you don't have that level, you're not going to read it or see it. Discretionary access control is lets an owner actually decide who will have control of or who will be able to access the information. So the data creator or data owner can change the access controls on their information, and they can specify it. So it's not as secure as mandatory access control. And then you've got sometimes just called role-based access control, but it's also known as non-discretionary, which basically says that you get access based upon your role. So if you are an HR analyst, if you're a security analyst 1 or security analyst 2, you would get access based upon your role in the organization. That's non-discretionary access or role-based. Most of the time we call it role-based. And then there's attribute, which is not as common, but based on how it's to be accessed. So it could be exact environmental factors, time of day, where you're accessing the information from. You could have, if you're sitting in a secure facility, you may have one type of access, where if you're outside the secure facility, you have a different type of access. And they talk a little bit about the principle of least privilege. I teach my students this: it is better to give than take away. Think about that. It is better to give than take away. If you start with the model of least privilege, in other words, we're going to give you the least amount of privilege to do your job. And then I find out that you can't do your job because of the access controls I've placed on resources. Then I can give you more access. If you want to make someone mad, especially a techie, have them have access to a large amount of parts of the system and then come to them and take that access away. Because their first thing is going to be, what, you don't trust me? What's wrong? You don't, huh? What? So it's better to give than take away. So start with the idea of least privilege and then go from there. So, you know, it makes your life easier as a network admin, definitely. So let's go again. Okay, so there's a slide here. There's a drag and drop now, and then it's also on the test, the chapter test. So I would think more than likely it's something you need to know. Okay. Okay, AAA is a method of securing items on a network with access control. There's three parts: authentication, who are you? Authorization, what can you do? And then accounting, what did you do? So authentication, by the way, for authorization and accounting to work at all, you've got to have authentication. So we're going to find out who you are first. We're going to find out how much you can spend or what you can do, and then we're going to keep up with it. AAA uses a AAA server, and there's a couple ways you can do this. One is with a AAA router and doing a local database. This is, all of you've done this, and if you've done Cisco and you've done SSH, you used a local database in order to authenticate the user coming in with SSH to the BTY line. You may not have done this. If you've been in CCNA security class, you've actually done this. But this is where you've got the AAA is going out to a Cisco secure ACS server, or it'd be an identity server, ISE server now. They can also look at an LDAP database or look at the an AD database and authenticate folks. So you've got both local authentication and server-based authentication. One thing that you do need to know, and you need to commit to memory, is that Radius uses UDP. Okay, it's not a bad idea too to throw in ports 1812 and 1813 to your memory. 1645 and 1646 are not as common, but Radius uses UDP 1812 and 1813. It combines authentication and authorization, and it only encrypts the password in the access request. Everything else is unencrypted, so the username, services, and accounting is unprotected. Know that. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'm giving you a hint here. Radius uses TCP port 49. It separates all three functions, and it encrypts the entire body of the packet. It does have a standard TACUS plus header, but it encrypts the entire body. Know these differences. Know that Radius is UDP, combines authentication and authorization, and it does not encrypt the entire packet, only encrypts the password. And then know that TACUS is TCP 49, separates everything and encrypts all of the information. Questions about that? I can't really tell you much more than that. Logging, accounting, this is where we can actually log to a syslog server, and we can do different types of logging, network, what you're actually doing, PPP sessions, connection sessions, AAA, so it's telnet or SSH. So when you do show SSH and it shows you someone connected, that's actually showing you in a very simple form accounting for SSH. Then they got exec, where you're doing commands in the exec terminal session. System, system level events. This is where you can do syslog server and look at different levels. Command accounting, which they actually do here on campus. I type any command into a campus switch, it's automatically captured. And then resource usage, which can be done too. So these are just some different items here that you can look at. CERT, SANS. Anybody been to SANS training? I went to a SANS ethical hacking class years ago. And I think the guy that I took the class with still works for SANS. And it was good. It was a good class. It was expensive, but it was a good class. I was pretty happy with it. If I'd have been at a little different level in my career, I think it would have been better for me. But it was good. Cisco Cybersecurity Reports, they have a full report you can download. They've also got like the Talos page you can go look at. This is Cisco Security Blogs. They have a security blog just like Unit 42. So you can go out here and look at the security blog and see what's going on. So here's vulnerabilities and some NASA stuff. Actually, I'm gonna leave that up because I'll go read that. So different things here, looking at different types of protection against crypto mining and malware. So be interesting here. Yep. So good reads, scary reads. Cisco Talos, so you can actually go in and see kind of like the live incidents that are going on. So we're looking at spams, different things going on. You can actually look at different nets and different stuff and see what's going on. See reputation, web neutral, blacklist. So just how Talos is actually looking at these different items and doing this. By the way, if you get a chance to go to Cisco Live in Orlando, if you get a chance to go to Cisco Live anytime, I would go. I am going again this year. I went last year, and it is just an amazing conference. Really, really good. Here's another company, FireEye, that does security as a service, automated indicator sharing. They actually send you information about cyber threats, so things that are going on and can be sent out to you. Wildfire is Palo Alto's thing that basically does the constant whitelisting, blacklisting, looking at vulnerabilities. If it sees something it doesn't know, it will do an additional item or look at it. And now this is CVE. Oops, site can't be reached. That ain't good. I think they've got the wrong site in there. CVE. Yep, they do. I had www. There's CVE. They've got, this is CVE site. You can search the CVE list and look at the different ones. You can download them. But this is a common vulnerabilities and exposure database. We're going to learn much more about this, but you're going to look at how there's a form that we use for these, and it will be important when we move on, especially to the SecOps class or SecOps exam, because they're going to ask you a great deal about CVE and how the CVEs are determined. A couple other sharing specifications. The structured threat information expression and trusted automated exchange of indicator information. And that is Chapter 8. Now, I'm not going to go over Chapter 9 because it is, in fact, cryptology, cryptanalysis. This is stuff you should know, really, again, from the Security Plus class. Obviously, I want you to do it, and this is something you will need to do with your students. It will be a good review for them if they've had Security Plus, and it will also be good for them if they've not had it at all, because you can do it. Good question, Carl. I can't say exactly, but let's just say I didn't read that document. So how's that? And still had no problems. I didn't read that document in full. So the thing was asked in this document. I did not read that one in full. I have to admit completely that I got a little bored with it. Carl read the whole thing. It's good for you. I call that it's a character building exercise. Yeah. All right, good question by James. Do you have to pass the end course exam with a certain grade? Yes, you need to make a 75 or higher on the final exam first try for this class. So make sure you make a 75 or higher, and then you're actually going to get a voucher for both SecOps and for SecFun. So you'll get a voucher for both. Your students will also get vouchers for both. And I believe your vouchers are 70%. And you saw the email I sent out. They will be ready before the end of, actually, I think they're already pretty much going to be ready in about 6 days. So by the end of this month, if you get finished and you want to finish the class and let me certify you, I will do that, and you can go ahead and apply for your vouchers. So if you're wanting to take it pretty soon, you'll have your vouchers. Okay. Be aware, again, it takes about, once you request a voucher, it can take up to 2 weeks for you to get the vouchers. And then once you actually get the vouchers, they're good for 3 months on the Sec Fund, and they're actually good for 6 months on the SecOps. That's something they've done on this one, which is new, because it's a 2-exam certification. They were able to get it to where the first voucher is valid for 3 months, and the second voucher is valid for 6 months. Folks, I'm going to stop recording real quick.